Hey everybody, welcome to today's installment of Dickie and Donny Do Business, presented by Business on Purpose. Today we are joined by none other than the Director of Coaching here at Business on Purpose, Thomas, or Doc, DOC. Should we call him Doc?
Yeah.
Has he earned that, Dickie?
El
Quite the
Jefe.
introduction.
Doc Jefe.
Yeah, that's right. Well, my name is Brandon, or Brandon, Donny Gray. I'm joined by my co-host, Shawn, Dickie Stinson. He just chose that name for no reason. But Dickie and Donny, we are here. And Thomas, thank you for joining us today. What a privilege.
It's going to be a great time. Looking forward to it.
I love it. Is this the first podcast you've ever been asked to do?
First and maybe only. So we'll try to keep my behavior.
We're big time. I don't know if you know this, but we are climbing the Spotify ranks exponentially. I mean, we're really setting records. It's
crazy.
Quite incredible.
It's like the Yeti effect. You know how Yeti was normal, and then they thought, well, maybe if we charge $1 million, they'll think it's great, and they did, and now it worked. That's what we're like. We get millions of followers. That's who we are. So, well, Thomas, one of the things we do every time we have a guest join is we ask a series of 3 questions. It will go Dickie, Donny, Dickie, and they're rapid fire, and you have to answer them. So, Dickie will get us started. Go for it, Dickie.
Truck or sedan?
Truck.
What beach or
model?
Mountains?
Oh, shoot.
Dickie.
Have y'all done this before? Or is this like a first time thing?
Beach or mountains?
Beach, as in Nick Beach, beachside construction.
Nick Beach.
My dude right there. Look him up.
Okay.
There we go.
And tacos or burritos?
Oh, tacos.
All right.
I don't know if you can go wrong. But
tailgate of the beach, or tailgate of the truck on the beach. That's Thomas's best life right there.
I'm in for that all day, every day. Yes.
I love
today.
I love it. Well, Dickie, last time we talked a little bit about core values, right? You down with UCVs?
You know me.
That's right. We talked a little bit about core values.
I actually forced my kids to listen to my podcast on the way home from spring break, and they were surprisingly interested, and then they nodded off to sleep. So, yeah.
Shoot. Well, that's the effect we've been known to have on people. Our coaching looks about the same a lot of the times. But
not true. Not true. We have dynamic coaching, hands-on, high intensity, high touch coaching.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Whatever you say. Dickie, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about forecasting, and one of the earlier sessions I do with my clients is getting to cash. So we need to know, first of all, are you a profitable business? And number 2, if we're going to grow your business, what are the resources we have? What are the Lego building blocks we have? Do we have people? Do we have money? And do we have a product we have to offer? And so most people come to us pretty quickly early on to say, hey, I really don't know if I'm right side up or upside down or somewhere in the middle with my cash. So Thomas helped us, really created this forecasting document earlier on. It was originally called the Project Start Sheet, right? The Beebs created the Project Start Sheet, iterated into a forecasting document. And then Brandon and I used it last year with a masterclass that we did. We reformatted it even more with cost of goods and overhead. So it is in the third 3.0, I guess.
Yeah.
Third iteration. Thomas, our listeners may not understand. We throw forecasting around because we talk about it. Can you give a 1-minute summary on what's the Project Start Sheet that is now forecasting? What is this that we're talking about?
Yeah, that's good. I think a lot of people look back, like look in the rearview mirror to make decisions. And that's really good in that, they've got a dashboard or something that they're using to track their finances. Maybe they're pulling up a P&L. Maybe they're using a balance sheet. For us, we use the level 2 dashboard. And so that gives us a great historical record of what has happened. But what we were quickly realizing, and why Scott kind of built the first iteration of this, was, especially with many contractors, like they know, all right, I've got 3 contracts out there. They haven't started yet. So when can we start projecting some of that revenue to hit? Hence the name Start Sheet. And so it's really powerful in that, like, you could look at a builder and say, all right, hey, they've got $18 million under contract, but 3 of those could finish in February and 3 of those could not start until November. And so there's this massive gap in cash flow, and we've got more under contract than we've ever had before, but we don't actually know either that money's already collected in the rearview mirror or it's kind of further out in the future and we can't collect it yet. So that's kind of the need for the forecasting sheet, if you will.
Great. Is this forecasting sheet where you're tracking what you're forecasting, right? So we're forecasting a project to end or big draws in these months and not in these. It kind of shows the holes, like you were saying. is this something you have your clients make cash decisions off of? Like, well, it's on here, so I know we have this cash. Like, how do you leverage this other than seeing the holes?
Yeah, so the holes is a big one for sure. A lot of times I'll use it to do basically like a projected net income or profit if you want. Profit's always
Okay.
a little bit of a dangerous word because it doesn't allocate for like reinvestment back into the business, but we'll call it profit just for simplicity's sake today. And so I'll look out and say there's an on average $100,000 of profit a month. You're like, we're gonna have a really good year. What would happen if we gave a 10% raise to all of our employees? And you've got a row right there, and you can just, take that formula and multiply every little column by 0.10. So basically adding it, or 1.10, to make it a little bit larger, and say, okay, well, here's what that does to our bottom line based on projected revenue. You could also start looking at some things. One of the big things we do is try to manage people's cost of goods, because you look at a contractor and say they got 82 to 85% cost of goods, which is about average for kind of the high end custom home builders that we tend to work for. Like, if you have $18 million of revenue forecasted and you change 1% of your cost of goods, like you can get it down by 1%, you can all of a sudden see what that does to the future numbers. And if you can go from 85 to 84%, I mean, you do that math. I'm not super smart, but 1% of $18 million is a lot of money at the end of the day for not doing any more work. And I think that's where the forecast is really helpful, is you can just start playing with some numbers. Now, I got a lot of clients that'll actually use actuals. They'll track those forecasts, and then they'll be able to come back and look and say, okay, well, what were our actuals based on our projections? And then you can figure out, well, how much is our melt or our bleed, whatever you guys want to call that number of, all right, we were projected to do $300,000. We actually did 280. And so, okay, we've got about a 8% melt on what we're doing month over month. So we can make some decisions on that as well. It's like, all right, just because we have it,
really good.
Something's going to get kicked out. There's going to be a material delay. One of our subs is going to flood something and make a mistake. Like, I don't care how good you are, mistakes just happen. And so it really gives them some momentum as far as projecting those numbers and making kind of real-time decisions prior to them actually becoming a problem.
Yeah, that's good. I actually got fired from a client for using this tool.
Did you really?
Oh yeah. I used this with a guy. They crushed their work. They worked with us for 6, 7 months, got all their stuff dialed in, and then realized they weren't going to make a profit in these next 6 months or 12 months. And the tool that I gave them to help them, like, and they're going to do fine. They're crushing life. I'm so happy for him. He'll come back and work with us again, but he realized, oh no, I'm not making any money. And I was like, yeah, that's true. So he said, see you later. And I was like, well, you're welcome. He's like, I love you, man. I was like, I love you too. We'll catch up later.
Yeah.
Coach, so good. You got yourself out of a job.
That's right.
It's probably worth noting, we do this a lot with contractors and home builders. There are other industries I'm sure this would work in, but because builders and contractors will have a 16-month project and they're expecting 40% up front and all the different bill schedule, having this on a spreadsheet really allows you to see holes, because you're like, well, if it's $1 million job in 10 months, just make it real easy. Well, we do 20% up front, so 200 grand in January, and then 85 grand the rest of the months until the project's over. It allows you to see, well, that's expected income. And then you have all the scattered jobs, right? And so this works really, really well with any job where it's going to take you a time and you have a draw schedule. Draw schedules work really, really well with forecasting. If you are in, like, I have not found a way to use this in any way with retail other than going back. Like, I work with a lady in retail, and we've gone back and said, well, last February you made 150 grand. So are we going to forecast that's what you're making this? Do we want to make more? Like, it's hard, but with contractors and home builders and anyone in the construction world, it works really, really well. So if you're sitting here listening to this and not in that world, wondering where this fits in, it might be hard, but reach out to us and we'll see if we can figure it out.
I think
But
the
it works
idea
really well
is,
there.
do you have a future expectation of where your money's coming from?
Yeah.
1 month, 3 months, 6 months,
Yeah.
whatever business you do, you need to have an understanding of when your hot seasons are, when your cold seasons are, and how you manage your liquidity. There's a fancy word for you. Thomas, a lot of builders, they get their jollies off on the WIP billing. You hear about this all the time, and they're like, oh, my WIP billing is top notch. How do you use a forecasting document with a WIP billing in an accrual sense of, this more, we pay ourselves for the work when we do it, not when we get the cash? How do you work with those together?
Yeah, I think you can. I mean, I don't know that it changes a whole lot, to be honest. Like as long as you're like, because I'll sit down with a builder, and what I'll do with them, because I don't like fully using this for whip billing. Like I think if you're not collecting cash with some of this, it can really mess some things up. But
Mm.
Yep.
I have worked with some builders to just be able to say, okay, if we want to sit over here kind of in la la land and say, here's the work that we could bill for if we closed our doors, we got 50% of framing done, or we got, if we're in rough end stage, we got 20% of that done. You can go ahead and drop those numbers in and say, okay, like we have not collected on this, but it's still showing our scheduled draws all the way out, and we can just come back in and add those numbers in either way at that
Okay.
point. So
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Sean, do you have a story? You already told us one of how you coached a guy to fire you, which is
Yeah.
amazing marketing
Yes.
on our end.
I was so
you-
good. He was like, "You crushed it. I don't have any more money to pay you."
Yeah,
I was
you
like,
gave me
"Okay,
so
you
much
do, but-"
clarity. Yeah. Do you have a story of where either this really helped someone catch something before the fact, or the opposite, where you were like, man, the amount of clarity, like good or bad? Like, have you had a client walk through this where
I
this just
have,
was
yeah.
amazing?
So I was working with a California builder, and he had two products. He had a kind of a not a tenant improvement. He was doing apartment condo remodels for
Mm,
a property management group, and so he would get a couple of apartments a week, couple of apartments a month. He'd renovate them, you know, lipstick on a pig, paint, cabinets, all the good stuff. And he had a crew in the northern part of the city that was running these remodels, and then he had a new construction division that was running true builder new construction. And so his cost of goods were wildly different because on his remodels and his condos, he was, obviously lower cost of goods, higher labor rates. We ran this, it took about an hour. It didn't take that long. Ran all his numbers, put it together, realized he was making zero or negative dollars on those apartment remodels.
Oh,
And we looked at his profit, his net profit, and realized, oh, you're not making any money on these. He's like, oh, no, we're not making a cent.
yep.
Actually, we're probably losing $1,000. Now I'm keeping these guys busy. He was glad. He's a wonderful contractor, loves giving people jobs and building jobs into
mm,
the community. But he was like, man, I can't run a business on not as like a nonprofit to keep guys in work if I'm not going to make money on it. And so we actually said either he changes his structure for his comp structure on those units, or he just abandons them. And he did, and he reset everything, and it was really helpful.
Yeah.
that's awesome.
I
I
think
have
going back
a
to what y'all said a little bit ago, because y'all hit on something that just kind of hit home of Brandon, you saying, well, I've gone back with some people and looked at their P&Ls. Like we have to base our decisions on something. And
right.
so what the forecasting tool gives you is just a little more meat and potatoes to like live off of from a decision making standpoint than just, well, let's hope for this. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like I got to know, like, does our payroll need to be 30 grand? Does it need to be 130 grand? I've got to base that decision off of something,
Right.
Well, our cost of goods, like we got to get our material prices down. Well, how do you know? Because I'm looking out and I just realized if these are the numbers that we hit, like we're not going to make any money. I don't want to go and do
Doesn't
$10
look
million
good. Yeah.
of work and not have anything to show for it and just be running a nonprofit at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so I think with that,
That's
like it
good.
is a awesome decision making thing, but it also helps you sleep at night. Like there have been a
Ooh.
couple times I've been building it out with clients and you see it on paper and you go, oh, I almost feel like I can like breathe right now because I'm like, now I just got to go do whatever the technical work is that we happen to do, whether it's building or development or real estate or mortgages or like you look out at your pipeline of the money that's coming in and you're like, okay, I can go to sleep tonight knowing that like as long as we do the things that now are in our control, which is all the technical work that you do, you're going to hit these numbers. And so I think, man, like
Mm,
the peace of mind there is huge. I don't know what people do that don't have this. And they're just like, well, I hope something good happens in 3 months. And it's based off absolutely nothing. It's
yeah.
like
It
jumping
feels
off a
like I should
cliff
be
without a
making money.
parachute.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like I
Yeah.
should be doing better. I've had a couple of clients the same way that have realized they're owed so much money, like $1 million in
Mm,
receivables. And I've said,
Yeah.
listen,
Oh yeah.
if you don't go collect some money, you don't show up at some people's doors, you are closing your shop. And they go out. And I had one guy went out and got like 140 grand next week. I was so proud of him. I was like, dude, you just
Yeah.
need some money to keep this thing going. He's like, I know, and I've already done the work. I said, just go get your money. It's
yeah.
you did the
Yeah.
work.
It's so good. We have, and this is a subtle plug. We're doing another financial tune-up summer series in July. We did one last year. I believe they're all on YouTube, but we'll do it again. We look at kind of 3 tools: overhead. What do you have to spend to keep your doors open? You lose all your jobs. What is it going to cost you to keep your doors open? I was working with a guy internally. He told me his was about 65 grand. Filled out overhead. It was 111 a month, and they
Oh,
can afford it.
Little
Like,
different.
that's the crazy thing. They can afford it, but that's 65 grand. They were disappeared. They had no idea where, you talk melting. They had no idea where it was coming from. So we overhead. And then the second one is how to subdivide your bank accounts. And that is where we just track the cash based on your different accounts. And then the last one is forecasting. And hey, how do we forecast revenue out? I had a client, this was just last week. We're looking at forecasting, and it looks like he's making 60 to 80 grand on top of cost of goods and taxes. Like, this should be cash in the bank monthly for January, February, and March of this year. And I'm looking at his level 2 dashboard with his bank accounts, and we're not going anywhere. And it's like, that gives us as a coach to be like, what happened to this 65 grand? And I'm like, okay, go back to your system, and how much, it said you brought in 225. How much did you bring in? Well, QuickBooks says 223. Okay, so we're pretty close there. Where in the world is that money? What are we spending our money on? And he realized his QuickBooks was doubling a lot of his cost, and his CRM, his like JobTread or whatever it was, I can't remember which one he used, was showing he made 112. So he was making decisions on 225. It literally doubled it to 112. And it was like, we've been doing this for 3 or 4 months. So it even revealed that, right? Where you're like, well, this doesn't help now, but man, it helps us forecast out. Cause he's like, man, I can go get work. That's not the issue. I've been kind of letting my feet off the gas pedal to catch up. And it's like, no, you can't do that. We have to get more work because all of our numbers are based on your projection, which were wrong. So I think it does show us holes, but it brings a lot. It's like your check engine lights all over the map when you look at what cash you have and forecasting. They play with each other really well. So there's my subtle plug to our financial tune-up, but it's so good.
So one more story there. This is one of my favorite stories of just using this spreadsheet. But I had a client probably 2-3 months ago. We were building all this out, and we realized like he's basically can't take another job until like next July. Like, we were sitting there looking at his numbers, and with his team, he's like, I don't want to grow my team. And so many of our tools like do this, right? Like the vision story overlaps with this, and you can go back and just get information. And so we went back to his vision story he had built about a year ago. We said, hey, here's the amount of money that you said you were going to be excited if you hit. Like, if you made this amount, you're going to be good. He was going to make like 75K more than that, right? So like, he's already surpassing that. And he's sitting here all stressed out, and he's like, I gotta go finish these estimates. And I was like, hey man, why? He's like, what do you mean why? And I was like, you've already got work for the next 18 months, at this point. You're going to make more than a year ago you said you would have been content with. But like, I mean, you guys see it every day. Like, the entrepreneurial mindset is like, the answer is always more. Like, I don't even know what the question is. The answer is always more. And so just to be able to be like, hey, let's zoom out a little bit. Let's look at the next 18 months. What happens if you say no, or if you say yes to these two? Well, you're going to be in here. You said you want to be out of the day-to-day. You're going to be right back in the day-to-day, taking 2 jobs as the main project manager for them. For what? For 75 grand more? You're going to miss the next 2 years of your life and be miserable? And he just laughed, and he was like, I've never said no to a job before. Like, literally, those are the words that came out of his mouth. I've never said no to a job before. And it was just this life-giving moment of like, because he took the time to record the numbers, to piece it all together, to see what everything comes back at, and then I can have the freedom to say no to some of that and kind of slow the faucet down a little bit versus just, well, what comes, and kind of this recession era mindset of just every job is a good job. It's not at the end of the day, but you have to know when you can say yes and say no.
It's so good.
I had a similar story of a guy. I just love our tools that are so integrated. So there's forecasting and there's hiring, and there's, he had got all his jobs on his forecasting sheet and realized he had 8 jobs that he's trying to run between just him and like basically a part-time kind of a superintendent. And I was like, do you see how much profit you're making on these jobs? He's like, yeah. I said, well, if you just put some of that towards a full-time role, do you think that's probably a good way to not lose your mind? And he's like, yeah, that sounds great, because I'm running all, he's all over the place. He's like on every part of the state of South Carolina. And I was like, you can hire, one in Charleston, one in here, one here, and then you can just manage the business. He's like, that's what I need to do. And I was like, that sounds great.
Yeah,
So
nailed it.
I love that the tool is an avenue into hiring and building a team more than just
Right.
how much cash do you have.
Well, because the tool gives you clarity, and clarity helps you with your finances. It helps you with your people. It helps you with your purpose. And clarity is what we're pushing for. And that's what forecasting does. So this was great. Shawn, what are we talking about next week? Tell the people.
What are we talking about next week? You know, we have to look at our 450 episode master calendar that
we have
wrote.
to make sure we're not doing too much.
Didn't we write that this morning? We wrote that 450 page document on all of the things we're doing.
Yes, we did. We'll have to, we'll let you know, but
we'll have to check that. I think we've got cousin Daryl coming in, or Uncle Daryl. Cousin Daryl.
No, he didn't want to be an uncle. He wanted to be a cousin. He liked the D aspect of it and wanted to join. So cousin Daryl will be joining. I believe I know what we're talking about. He wants to talk about how life and business necessarily intersect, and we're going to walk through a lot of what that looks like in business and what that looks like in coaching and for business owners. So, but for our resident director of coaching, Thomas Joyner, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Thomas.
Great being here, boys.
We will end the same way we started. Dickie will ask you one more quick question. So, Dickie, go.
What are you drinking at 5 o'clock tonight?
Liquid IV.
Liquid IV.
Be a long one. Gonna be a long one. I love it.
I got a kid's soccer game tonight, so I'm just gonna go out there and rehydrate before I sweat it out and get eaten by mosquitoes.
Oh, nice.
Get after it. Get after it. Well, thank you for joining, Dickie. It's been a real good time.
Yep. And if you have any questions about business on purpose, we would be happy to have conversation on how to build your business that would run and grow without you. If you want to take our healthy business owner assessment, that is online, businessonpurpose.com/healthy. And you can take that assessment and we'll get in touch with you and review how you're doing, help you build clarity and systems into your business. You can email any of us, Brandon, Shawn, SHAWN, or Thomas at businessonpurpose.com, and we would be happy to set up a time to talk more about how to grow your business. So y'all have a great one, and we will catch you with Cousin D next week.
Godspeed.